When Barron Trump received a prestigious award, no one could have predicted what he would do with it. What happened next left everyone speechless and changed lives forever. The grand hall was filled with a low hum of voices, a mix of excitement and anticipation. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, casting warm, golden light across the room. Rows of chairs lined the polished wooden floors, and at the front stood a stage draped with deep blue curtains. The podium, engraved with intricate designs, gleamed under the spotlight. It was a night of celebration, a prestigious awards ceremony recognizing young individuals who had made remarkable contributions to their communities. Among the audience were proud families, journalists, and dignitaries, all waiting for the evening's highlight. Barron Trump sat quietly near the front, dressed in a sharp navy suit that matched the evening's formal tone. His posture was calm, but his mind buzzed with mixed emotions. This wasn't his first event like this, but tonight felt different. The award he was about to receive wasn't just a recognition of his achievements, it was a reminder of the privilege and responsibility that came with his position. Behind the stage, a large screen displayed slides of the nominees. The presenter, a charismatic woman with a confident smile, stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady, "tonight we honor those who have gone above and beyond to make a difference." The applause was polite but enthusiastic as the ceremony progressed. As each recipient was called to the stage, their stories of perseverance and impact filled the room with admiration. Barron clapped along, but his thoughts drifted elsewhere. In his mind, he saw something far from the glittering hall. He pictured the faces of the children he had met just weeks earlier during a visit to a struggling orphanage on the outskirts of the city. He remembered the cracked walls, the dimly lit rooms, and the hopeful eyes of the kids who greeted him with handmade cards and wide smiles. Despite their circumstances, they radiated a warmth that had stayed with him ever since. Barron's name was suddenly called, snapping him back to the present. The applause grew louder as he stood, adjusting his jacket before making his way to the stage. But even as he walked under the bright lights, the thought of those children remained firmly in his heart. As Barron walked onto the stage, the applause echoed through the hall. The presenter handed him the award, a gleaming plaque with his name engraved in bold letters. The crowd's energy was warm and congratulatory, but Barron's mind wasn't fully in the room. He smiled, nodded, and thanked the audience, but his thoughts were elsewhere. Weeks earlier, Barron had visited an orphanage on the outskirts of the city as part of a community outreach program. The place wasn't what he had expected. The building was old, with peeling paint and broken windows patched up with plastic sheets. Inside, the air smelled faintly of dampness, and the furniture was mismatched and worn. But what struck him most were the children. Despite their circumstances, the kids were full of life. They had run up to greet him, holding handmade drawings and cards, their faces beaming with excitement. "Look, we made this for you," a little girl had said, her voice brimming with pride as she handed him a crayon drawing of a big sun and stick figures holding hands. The staff at the orphanage were kind and hardworking, but the challenges they faced were obvious. The director, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Harper, had explained the struggles in a quiet, matter-of-fact tone. "We do the best we can," she had said, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "But resources are stretched thin. Some months we barely make it through." Barron had nodded, listening intently as she spoke. But what stuck with him the most wasn't her words. It was the look in her eyes, a mix of exhaustion and determination, as if she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders but refused to let it break her. Back on the stage, Barron held the award in his hands, the applause still ringing in his ears. He glanced down at the shiny plaque and felt a pang of guilt. This wasn't just a trophy. It came with a substantial monetary prize, one meant to recognize his efforts and help him continue his initiatives. But standing there, he realized something. He didn't need it as much as the children at the orphanage did. The applause died down, and Barron approached the microphone. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest, but he took a deep breath and steadied himself. He had made up his mind. The image of the kids at the orphanage, laughing, playing, but surrounded by so little, flashed in his mind. "Thank you," he began, his voice clear but tinged with emotion. "I'm truly honored to receive this award, but tonight I want to do something different." The audience leaned in, their curiosity piqued. Barron's grip on the plaque tightened as he continued. "This award represents so much more than recognition. It represents an opportunity, and I believe that opportunity should go to someone who needs it more than I do." He paused, glancing at the crowd. He could see a mix of surprise and intrigue on their faces. The room was silent, waiting to hear what he would say next. "I recently visited an orphanage," Barron said, his voice steady but passionate. "I saw firsthand the challenges they face every day, and I also saw the incredible resilience and hope in the eyes of the children there. They deserve a chance, a better chance than what they've been given." The crowd murmured, some nodding in understanding. Barron took another deep breath. "That's why I've decided to donate the monetary prize from this award to that orphanage. Because they need it more than I do." A wave of gasps and whispers swept through the hall. Barron looked out at the crowd, feeling a mix of nerves and resolve. He didn't know how they would react, but he knew he was doing the right thing. The room was completely silent for a moment after Barron's announcement, the weight of his words sinking in. Then, like a wave, the applause began, soft and scattered at first, but quickly growing louder until it filled the hall. People were on their feet, clapping and nodding, their faces a mix of admiration and awe. Barron stepped back from the microphone, his heart pounding. He hadn't expected such a strong reaction, and for a moment, he wondered if he had done too much, put himself in the spotlight in a way that felt uncomfortable. But then he caught the eye of someone in the front row, a woman who smiled and gave him a small, approving nod. It reassured him that he had made the right decision. After the ceremony, people crowded around him, offering handshakes and words of encouragement. One man in a sleek black suit said, "That was a bold move, young man. Not many people would have thought to do something like that." Barron smiled politely. It just felt like the right thing to do. Among the crowd, the event organizer approached him. "Barron," she said warmly, "that was incredible. We'll work with you to ensure the funds are delivered to the orphanage as soon as possible." "Thank you," Barron replied. "I'd like to visit them again soon if that's all right." The organizer nodded. "Of course, I think that would mean a lot to them." A week later, Barron found himself standing outside the orphanage once again. The building looked just as he remembered, worn but welcoming, with children's laughter spilling out from the courtyard. As he stepped through the gate, a group of kids ran up to greet him, their faces lighting up with recognition. "You're back," one little boy exclaimed, tugging at Barron's jacket. "Did you bring more stories?" Barron laughed. "Not this time, but I do have something even better." Inside, Mrs. Harper, the director, met him with a warm but puzzled smile. "Barron," she said, "we weren't expecting you today. Is everything all right?" "Everything's great," he replied, handing her an envelope. "I wanted to deliver this in person." Mrs. Harper opened the envelope, her eyes scanning the letter inside. When she realized what it was, a notice confirming the donation from Barron's award, her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my goodness," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Is this real?" "It is," Barron said. "I thought the money could help with some of the repairs you mentioned, or whatever else you need." Tears welled up in Mrs. Harper's eyes as she clutched the letter. "You have no idea what this means to us," she said. "The roof, the heating. We've been putting off so much because we just didn't have the funds. This will change everything." As word spread, staff members and children gathered in the main hall. The kids didn't fully understand what was happening, but their excitement was contagious. One of the older boys stepped forward, his curiosity getting the better of him. "Mr. Barron," he asked shyly, "why are you helping us?" Barron crouched down so he was eye level with the boy. "Because I've seen how amazing you all are," he said, "and I think you deserve every chance to succeed." The boy's eyes sparkled, and he nodded solemnly. "We won't let you down," he said with a determined smile. The rest of the afternoon was filled with moments that Barron knew he would carry with him forever. The staff, moved by his generosity, shared stories of the challenges they faced and the plans they could now put into action. Repairs to the building, new school supplies, proper winter coats for the kids, all things they could finally afford. Barron spent hours with the children, playing games, listening to their stories, and answering their endless questions. For him, it wasn't just about giving money, it was about making a connection, showing them that someone cared. As the sun began to set, Mrs. Harper pulled him aside. "Barron," she said, her voice steady but emotional, "this isn't just a donation. This is hope. You've given these kids, and all of us, something we haven't felt in a long time." Barron nodded, his throat tightening. "They've given me something too," he said quietly, "a reminder of what really matters." As he left the orphanage that evening, the sky painted with streaks of orange and pink, Barron felt a sense of fulfillment he couldn't quite put into words. The kids had waved until his car was out of sight. their laughter still echoing in his ears. He didn't know what the future held for them, but for the first time, it felt like they had a real chance. What he hadn't expected was how much their joy would inspire him. This wasn't just about one act of kindness. It was about the idea that small, meaningful actions could create ripples far beyond what anyone could imagine. A week after Barron's visit to the orphanage, Mrs. Harper decided to share the news of his donation with the local community. She felt it was important for people to know the story, not just because of the impact it had on the orphanage, but because it might inspire others to act. She didn't expect what happened next. The story spread quickly. It started with a small article in the local paper, accompanied by a photo of Barron sitting with the kids, surrounded by their crayon-drawn pictures. From there, it was picked up by bigger outlets, and soon, the orphanage was receiving calls and messages from people all over the country. How can we help too? Mrs. Harper was overwhelmed. Donations began pouring in, not just money, but toys, books, clothes, and supplies. Local businesses offered to help with the renovations. A construction company volunteered to fix the roof at no charge. A teacher reached out, offering to tutor the children in her free time. When Barron heard about the outpouring of support, he was stunned. He hadn't intended for his gesture to become public knowledge, but seeing how many people were moved by the story filled him with a deep sense of gratitude. A few days later, Mrs. Harper invited Barron back to the orphanage to show him the progress they had made. When he arrived, he was greeted by an even larger crowd than before. Staff, children, volunteers, and community members who had come together to celebrate what they had achieved. But the biggest surprise came when one of the older kids, a 12-year-old girl named Mia, stood up to speak. She held a piece of paper in her hands, trembling slightly as she began to read. "Dear Mr. Barron," she said, her voice clear but emotional, "when you came here we didn't know who you were, but you didn't treat us like we were just kids in need. You listened to us, you played with us, you made us feel important. And then you gave us hope." Her hands shook as she continued. "Because of you, our home is becoming a better place. We have new books for school, warm clothes for the winter, and soon we'll have a roof that doesn't leak when it rains. But what means the most is that you believed in us. You showed us that we matter." Mia looked up from her paper, her eyes shining with tears. "So, on behalf of all of us, I want to say thank you. You didn't just change our lives, you changed how we see the world." The room erupted into applause, but Barron sat frozen in his seat, overcome with emotion. He hadn't expected this, a simple thank you note that carried more weight than any award or recognition he'd ever received. It wasn't just the words, it was the sincerity behind them, the knowledge that his actions had truly made a difference. As Mia walked back to her seat, the children began handing him small tokens they had made: a paper flower, a hand-painted rock, a bracelet made of colorful string. Each gift was a testament to their gratitude, simple yet profound. Mrs. Harper approached Barron, her own eyes brimming with tears. "You started something incredible," she said softly, "and now it's grown into something none of us could have imagined." Barron looked around the room, at the faces filled with hope and joy. He realized that this wasn't just about helping others. It was about the connections they had built, the inspiration that would ripple outward. And in that moment, he felt something he hadn't expected, a deep sense of purpose. As the applause filled the room, Barron felt a warmth in his chest that he couldn't quite describe. It wasn't pride or relief. It was something deeper. Looking around, he saw not just smiles, but hope. Real, unfiltered hope radiating from every face in the room. Mia had returned to her seat, but her words still echoed in Barron's mind. "You showed us that we matter." It was such a simple statement, but it carried the weight of everything he had hoped to achieve. These kids, who had been struggling in silence, now stood taller, their spirits brighter. And it wasn't just about the money or the renovations. It was about the belief that they were seen, that someone cared enough to act. One of the younger children, a boy no older than 6, tugged at Barron's sleeve. "Mr. Barron," he said shyly, holding up a small drawing. "This is for you." Barron knelt down to the boy's level, taking the picture. It was a crayon sketch of the orphanage, but now the building was surrounded by flowers and sunshine. "You drew this for me?" Barron asked, his voice soft. The boy nodded, a wide smile spreading across his face. It wasn't pride or relief, it was something deeper. Looking around, he saw not just smiles, but hope. Real, unfiltered hope radiating from every face in the room. Mia had returned to her seat, but her words still echoed in Barron's mind. "You showed us that we matter." It was such a simple statement, but it carried the weight of everything he had hoped to achieve. These kids, who had been struggling in silence, now stood taller, their spirits brighter. And it wasn't just about the money or the renovations. It was about the belief that they were seen, that someone cared enough to act. One of the younger children, a boy no older than 6, tugged at Barron's sleeve. "Mr. Barron," he said shyly, holding up a small drawing. "This is for you." Barron knelt down to the boy's level, taking the picture. It was a crayon sketch of the orphanage, but now the building was surrounded by flowers and sunshine. "You drew this for me?" Barron asked, his voice soft. The boy nodded, a wide smile spreading across his face. "Yeah, because you made it better." Barron's throat tightened. He couldn't find the words, so he simply smiled and ruffled the boy's hair. "Thank you," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. Mrs. Harper stepped forward, her usual calm composure replaced by visible emotion. "Barron," she began, her voice trembling, "I've been doing this work for a long time. I've seen so much generosity, but what you've done is different. You didn't just donate. You showed these kids that their lives matter, that they're worth investing in." Barron shook his head, his tone humble. "They taught me just as much as I taught them," he replied, "maybe more." The volunteers and staff joined the conversation, sharing their gratitude. One woman, who had recently started volunteering, said, "This place feels alive now, like it's not just surviving, it's thriving. That's because of you." The children began gathering around Barron, some tugging at his hands, others simply wanting to be close to him. Their laughter filled the room, and for a moment, it was easy to forget the hardships they'd faced. In their eyes, Barron saw resilience, a strength that was far greater than anything he could have imagined. As he prepared to leave, Mia approached him again. This time, she didn't have a letter or a gift. She simply looked at him and said, "We won't forget this, and one day we'll do something like this for someone else." Barron's heart swelled at her words. "I know you will," he said. "You're stronger than you realize." As he stepped outside, the sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and gold, the air filled with the sound of the children's laughter behind him. Barron took a deep breath, feeling a profound sense of connection, not just to the kids, but to something much bigger. The experience wasn't about him anymore. It was about the ripple effect, the way one act of kindness could inspire another and another, until the impact reached far beyond what anyone could predict. As Barron walked away from the orphanage that evening, he couldn't help but reflect on how a simple decision had grown into something so meaningful. He was willing to walk away from the orphanage that evening and act without judgment, but feeling like the meaningless sisterhood he'd made a promise to build. What had started as a gesture of kindness had become a symbol of hope, not just for the children, but for the entire community. It wasn't about the money, the plaque, or even the recognition. It was about connection. It was about showing others that no matter their circumstances, they mattered, that their struggles weren't invisible and their dreams weren't impossible. Barron realized something profound. True generosity isn't measured by the size of the gift, but by the impact it has. Kindness, no matter how small, has the power to ripple outward, touching lives in ways we may never fully understand. The kids at the orphanage didn't just receive funds for renovations or supplies. They gained a renewed belief in themselves, a sense of value that could inspire them to dream bigger. He also realized that acts of kindness are contagious. His decision to donate had inspired others to step forward, volunteers, donors, and local businesses, all working together to make the orphanage a better place. It was proof that change doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when people see an example and choose to follow it. But perhaps the most important lesson was one Mia had unknowingly taught him. Everyone has the ability to make a difference, regardless of their age, resources, or status. Sometimes all it takes is one person to believe in others, to show them they're not alone. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Barron felt a quiet but profound sense of fulfillment. He hadn't just given something tangible, he had given hope, and in return, he had gained a deeper understanding of what truly mattered. The takeaway was clear. Kindness is a spark that can ignite something far greater. And the best part, anyone can light that spark, no matter where they are or who they are. All it takes is the courage to act. If this story inspired you, Share it with someone who needs a reminder of the power of kindness. Together, we can create a ripple effect of positivity and hope. Don't forget to like this video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that show how small actions can lead to big changes. Let's make kindness go viral. How do you make mindfulness viral? Let's make kindness go viral.